Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 9 of Enigmatica 2 Expert Mode. I'm sure this fire is doing great things for this video's bitrate. Anyways, today's episode is all about getting passive resources. As a very rich man once said, you have to learn to make money while you sleep. And all of these ingots right here, none of them happened while we were asleep. They all came from either manual mining or our friend the digital miner. It works, but as we go further into the pack, we're going to need more and more resources. We're going to need to step this way up, and doing it by hand is not going to cut it anymore. Today, we start to make things make money for us. But before we get to work getting rich, I thought I'd show you what has changed between episodes. It's not anything huge, but I've excavated the lake further down here just to make it look a little bit deeper, and I've added these little floating gardens, chinampas as they were called, basically floating pods of dirt that directly got water from the lake. I finished making the rest of the pyramid 3D, which I think looks really great now. I wasn't expecting it to look quite this good, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. And as you can probably tell, the stairs have also been modified. Previously, they were like green and much lighter than the rest of the pyramid and had glowstone. It just didn't fit. Now they've been upgraded to match the visuals. On the other side, everything obviously matches. Down here, I've been experimenting with the bridge. I like the right angle cut more, but something is still missing, so I'll keep playing with it. It's not urgent. And inside the pyramid, you'll remember, is where our AE2 area is. You know, this space right here. But I've got a feeling that this is probably going to be torn down, because I have excavated the rest of the pyramid, and we suddenly have a lot more room to play with. We can definitely put this area to use for something a little bit nicer than this fake cave. In this corner, the reason why this hasn't been excavated is because this intersects with the immersive engineering room, and I really don't want to have to move it or dismantle this because I like the looks of it a lot, so I'm not sure how I go about getting rid of this stone without, compromising the entirety of the build there. If you have any ideas on how to go about this, let me know. Anyways, enough about what I've done between episodes, let's get into what we're doing this episode. If you've played this pack before, you know that I'm talking about sieves. The most important gate for this is this right here, the mana-infused gear. It doesn't look particularly difficult, but mana-infused ingot must be made with mana steel and diamond. By default, mana steel is made by getting into Botania, but I don't really want to do that right now, so I'm going to take what is probably the most well-known shortcut in this pack. I've put all of the armor that we've gotten from our mob farm through the arc furnace, and as a result, we are up to over 500 mana steel. All we need to do is throw our mana steel through this infusing factory, these get turned into gears, and we can make our very first sieve. We'll want 8 of these are the last 3, and these will get immediately made into auto sieves, which are the automatic version. We will also need some meshes, including 1 flint mesh, 2 iron meshes, and 5 diamond stiffened meshes. Now that we have all of these, let's look for a place to set them up. If we follow our little pathway, I have built the very beginning of a mineshaft entrance over here. It only seemed fitting that our resource generation should be in a mine. So I'm going to get to work on building this, and then we can set all of these guys up. Over here, we now have our entrance and a little bit of a mine. This isn't a straight staircase down, it has little ladders that take us down a few levels, and beyond these little platforms and ladders, we have the start of a little mine shaft area. This really isn't anything too crazy, it's just some little dugout areas where we're going to be able to put our machines. The way sieves work is really simple. You give them a material, and they'll give you a chance at various ores, or in most cases, parts of ores. Different materials give you different ores, but there is a lot of overlap. So in order to keep this as straightforward as possible, we're going to want to consolidate everything. In each of these little hallways here, I'm going to put down our sieve, and to collect everything into one central area, an interface. In order to keep them stocked, we can use material stonework factories. The factories essentially just make cobblestone products on demand. So here, if you tell it to crush cobble once, it'll make gravel. Do it twice and it'll make sand, do that and then smelt it and you get glass, you get the idea. And we'll want conduits from the stonework factory into the sieve, and from the sieve into the interface. Now that we have everything set up, we can run a quick test. We'll put our mesh inside the sieve, set it into grind mode, which will create gravel, and we get all sorts of ore pieces. All of these then get moved into the interface. I went ahead and set up 2 more. In just the few minutes that we've had this running, we have made a lot of stuff. So now it's time that we get to process it all. This is where AE2 comes in. This one here is going to be a subnet, nice and bright blue. Over in this other hallway, our subnet is going to help us move the items into crafters. The crafters will be fed by another quantum entangloporter, which is also going to feed how we process the ores. Industrial Craft 2. If you'll remember, these machines can only be powered by EU or Mechanism, which natively converts to EU. And I've also realized that I put this machine in the wrong place, and I now must spend 40 hours mining it. Let's go ahead and just do a demonstration of how this all works. In our crafter, we set a recipe for copper ore, and if we now put these copper pieces, it makes copper, which gets sent into the macerator. It's really slow without upgrades, but once it's done, it gets put into the furnace, and the outcome will go into this ME interface, once I remember to craft the proper upgrades for it. And there we go. Our copper ingots have made their way back into our subnet. And if we want to make this fully automatic, we set copper ore as a filter in our storage bus, set up our other recipes. Now, it is definitely getting backlogged right now because these machines cannot keep up, but if we give them some upgrades, all of a sudden, we're going to be doing a lot better. Now that we have all of this set up, let's work on giving these ores a place to go. To explain the storage that we're going to use for all of these ores requires just a basic explanation of what a subnet is. All of this AE2 network that you see here in blue is an AE2 subnet, a network that is independent but still connected to our main one. If we follow this line down here, this is where the actual connection happens. This right here is our main line that goes all the way back to the heart. We want it to connect to the subnet to give it power, but not channels. We want them to be independent. That's what this quartz fiber does. We want them to be independent because we don't want any of those intermediate processes, those unfinished ores, to be sent into our main storage. That should be kept on its own. Instead, we only want to take the final products from this and send them back into our main storage drawers. To do that, we can put a storage bus on the subnet line, then we put an interface on the main line. And you can see that it does exactly what I want, which is crash my AE2 network. Okay, so I was really trying to figure out why this wasn't working and was breaking my main network, and as per usual, it was a dumb mistake. If I put a storage bus here, that's all cool and good. But when I put the interface here, the channel wasn't getting sent across the storage bus, but it was getting sent across this cable here. And so the whole network thought it had 2 controllers, freaked out, and shut down. This is fixed by putting that little thing, a cable anchor, right there. And now, our main network still works, and any item that we add to the storage bus, like say a nickel ingot, will be sent from this subnet into our mainnet. Okay, and one more thing to add to the list of complications here. Right now, this should, in theory, work. As the subnet produces nickel, this number here in the main network should be going up. But as you can tell, it's not. What's the issue? Why doesn't this work? Well, apparently the issue is that the subnetwork needs a security terminal. That was a lot more confusing than I was hoping for. But it does work, and now all that should be left is to add drawers for all of the missing ores. But we aren't done with sieving quite yet. And what we need to do is make another one of these hallways, which I've gone ahead and done, so that we can add 4 more sieving setups. In order to get all the useful drops out of sieves, we're going to need to sift through endstone, netherrack, and soul sand. These will go over here, but they won't be fully passive quite yet. Okay, so I've got them all set up, and if I throw some netherrack into our pulverizer, it'll get crushed down, sent to the sieve where we get new items like blaze powder. Cool, everything works. But it's never that easy, is it? The thing is that on the other side here, we can make all the materials that we need in this stonework factory. But over on this end, things aren't so simple. We don't have an easy way to make netherrack. The actual easy way to make this is with nether essence from mystical agriculture. That's why at the end of these lines is a crafter. The only problem is, nether seeds are tier 3, which require starlight crafting, something that we do not have at the moment. Endstone is a very similar story. No real easy way to make it, except to craft it with mystical agriculture, whose seeds require, again, starlight crafting. And don't get me wrong, this is not some impossibly difficult item to make, but I've been really trying to wait to get into magic mods until we had the tech side of things really settled down. So for now, I'm just going to go mine a bunch of these items manually, and we'll hope that that's enough to run it for a while. And after the destruction of the environment in the Nether and the End, we now have 200 stacks of endstone, 100 stacks of cobblestone, this is not cobblestone, netherrack, and 100 stacks of soul sand. It's not passive, but it's certainly a very good start, and it will allow us to set the rest of our recipes and our filters. And finally, everything can go in the storage bus. It'll need mystical agriculture to be fully operational, but for now, I think we can take a step back, look at the item numbers increasing, and be happy with a job well done. But just because we've got all those sieves on passive, doesn't mean that we're done there. You see all of these items here pinned in JEI? We are going to be automating every one of these. Maybe not the machines. These are what help us automate these. In order to set all of these up, we'll need a little more room than just a little mineshaft. And I was thinking that we could go to this building here and start working on its left side here. This whole mountain space that it goes into is all prime real estate, ripe for the taking. So I think it's a good idea to start working on it. Okay, so I forgot to record part of the build, but this is really not anything too complicated, although I like the direction this is going. The materials, these pillar designs, and the roof all are very reminiscent of the immersive engineering room, but here all of these empty slots will be filled in with setups for various machines. Everything here will lead back to our ME system from this P2P. This eventually leads all the way over here and way down, and connects up to the line that the forestry room is using. So, hello. You might notice that there are a lot of new machines back here. It looks very different. I'd originally recorded myself talking about all of these setups, but that was way too long. Instead, you guys are about to get the Spark Notes version. I'm going to explain what each setup does and why that's useful, starting with these right here. These are 4 more Stoneworks factories. They're kind of a theme this episode, and we have them making gravel, sand, glass, and silicon, all useful basic materials. This next one over here is an igneous extruder making obsidian. Cobblestone gets sent into this magma crucible, turned into lava, where that mixes with water and gives us obsidian. It's pretty straightforward, but if you're gonna do this, remember to use this pyroconvective augment. It makes the magma crucible way faster. Next up, we have 3 more extruders making diorite, andesite, and granite. Don't worry, I'm not planning to build with these awful blocks. The reason why we're making these is because this setup right here uses them as the input. The Nuclear Craft Rock Crusher can break these rocks into a lot of useful stuff: sulfur, fluorite, beryllium, zirconium, and rhodochrosite. All of these are useful in their own ways. Some are useful for empowering items, while others might be useful to make something like the Crystal Binder, which gets used in the Elite plating, the last tier of nuclear craft plates. Moving on, these 3 setups here are all part of the same group, which is devoted to making fluxed phytogrow. Over here, sandstone gets made into niter, while logs are smelted and then crushed into pulverized charcoal. They get sent through applied energistics, and over here are combined with rich slag to make rich phytogrow, which gets immediately infused into the most powerful variant, the fluxed phytogrow. To get the rich slags, we use something I mentioned a couple episodes back. The clock loop involves smelting clocks, getting a chance at rich slag, and then taking the gold, sending it to a crafter to immediately make the clocks again, and send them right back. The only inputs required are sand and redstone, both of which we make passively in other places. Finally, to close this loop off, this phytogenic insulator takes some of our fluxed phytogrow and grows trees with it, which is where our pulverized charcoal comes from. The result is a major excess of great wood logs and a lot of fluxed phytogrow, which is going to be great when we eventually put it to use to grow all sorts of mystical agriculture seeds. Finally, this last setup makes steel and treated wood. We bring in iron, coal, and logs. The coal is sent to a furnace where it gets smelted into coal coke. The coal coke goes down, and together with iron makes steel, while the creosote oil that it produces gets sent to this fluid infuser. Here, the creosote oil combines with planks and gives us treated planks, and we're up to over 1,000. But because we don't need infinite quantities of all of this stuff, all of these have been controlled with level emitters. Some of these machines, like the Magma Crucible and the Rock Crushers, can use up to 8,000 RF per tick. That's over 1/5 of our total power generation, just spent on a couple machines. In order to avoid wasting that much power and generating a bunch of stuff that we don't really need, level emitters help us control everything and only produce up to a certain amount of items. There we go. That version, much better. But we're not done with passive processes quite yet. The final process for today is going to be the industrial foregoing laser drill. This is a way to generate resources out of literal thin air, but it still has its price. It's going to need 4 laser drills and 1 laser base, which required me to use 5 of our last 6 iridium, so we're running real low. The drills get placed 1 block from the base, and then we need to make and give it a laser lens. In our case, white is definitely the color that gives us the best ore. Now, because these drills have limited I/O speeds for energy, they need at least 3 sides to be touching conduits in order to max out their speed. But that makes for a really ugly build to just have these wires everywhere. So to get around this, we're going to use our good friend the Ender Porcupine to send power wirelessly to it. Once they have the right coordinates, the power cell can start sending energy, which the laser drills use to increase the amount of work in the laser base. Once that hits 100%, we get our ores. Oh, and one more thing that I almost forgot. The sieve meshes can actually be enchanted to get more drops and to get them faster. We can make a quick and dirty enchantment setup, and with a little lapis and our abundant experience, we should be able to enchant some meshes. And we're off to a great start. After we have our enchanted sieve, we can make the enchantment extractor, and if you give it your enchanted item and a book, it will unenchant it. In our case, we want both off of it. Then we can take a printing press from Bibliocraft, as well as a typesetting table. The printing press will need books, and it will need ink sacs. In the typesetting table, you can take your book, put it down in this slot, and give this slot a chase. Then you can turn this into an enchanted plate, and if you put this in the printing press, it will print off copies of that book for you. Each chase is able to do 3 enchanted books, so because one gets used in the making, you come out with a net gain of 2 enchanted books. Now, one thing I didn't realize is just how much experience this uses. We are at 14 levels, and we started at 200. Luckily for us, these furnaces that process our outputs collect experience, and they have gone through thousands of ingots. From 14 to 245. Now that we finally have our 8 books, we can head to our sieves and start enchanting them. Let's compare the before and the after. This is with an unenchanted mesh, and this is if we enchant it. Look at how much faster that is and how much more that gives us. And finally, one more important thing to mention with the sieves is that you can name them to control the skin of the people inside. Let's take this guy for example. If I hit this with a name tag with my name, although he looks way worse than my actual skin does. But if you've made it this far in the video, feel free to send me your username and I'll put them as one of the little people doing the work and sieving all our materials. For now though, I think that this is a pretty good spot to wrap up our episode. Our laser drill has been diligently making tons of ores for us. Almost 2 stacks of iridium, that is so nice to see. And also other unique ones like dimensional shards and rock crystal. And even though this episode was a little light on building, you know how it is when you get into a certain mode and you just want to grind away. And grind away we did. Every single item that you see here is something that we've gone from getting manually to fully 100% passive in the background. And these are things that will soon be fully passive. They're just missing the inputs. So all things considered, yeah, I think we made some real solid progress. Next episode will be a bit more of a mix of progress and some building as we start to finalize the tech side of things and look to get into magic soon. Stay tuned for that. For now though, thank you for watching, and hey, stay cool.